All right, so for our purpose today, we will learn how to support learning through a balanced literacy framework in any context. The reason why we wrote that way is we weren't sure back when all of our resources were created if we were going to be hybrid or virtual. So we have some places where it addresses either model, but we know now we're all virtual. We will be successful when we understand the essential learning for our students, and we can create resources to help support that learning. So that is the purpose for our PD today. So let me give you a little background about why and how these resources were created. So we formed work teams for every grade level, and they consisted of teachers, coaches, APPLEs, intervention specialists, and vice principals. Why did we create these teams? We knew that there was going to be learning loss. So we know that summer, sometimes those kids experience summer slide, but along with summer, they were out of school a few months before. So we knew that was going to be an issue. We knew we needed to narrow down the learning. So we can't just go back and reteach the last year's standards and skills that they missed, right? Because now we'll put them behind for this year. So we knew there was going to be the need to somehow narrow that down, and then also a need for resources. So, what are some examples of how this can look? So different ideas to help you guys move forward with your virtual teaching. Our work teams worked very hard. They gave up a lot of their summer to prepare these resources. So if you know anybody that worked on these teams, give them some love. There's 2 of them in this meeting, just FYI. We really appreciate all the hard work. We couldn't have done it without them. Okay, so we're gonna start with just a little overview of balanced literacy. I'm not gonna get into this a whole lot. I know you've probably all seen this, but basically it just shows how it starts with a read aloud, and our read aloud is heavy teacher support. With just a small amount of student participation. And then it progresses all the way down to independent reading, where now independent reading is mostly the student with a small amount of teacher support. So for the purpose of the resources today, so this is an example of balanced literacy in terms of reading. So for today, you will see some resources for read aloud. You will see some resource and lessons for shared reading. There will be some resources for independent reading, not any lessons per se, because we obviously can't create lessons for independent reading. And then there will also be writing, which is another component of balanced literacy. And then there'll be word work in terms of grammar. So you'll have some grammar resources and lessons also. For guided reading, we won't be addressing guided reading in this PD. We don't know where we stand yet with assessment, so we haven't made any plans for how guided reading will be implemented. If you have a process that you are already using for virtual guided reading, then by all means keep it up. But like I said, we won't be addressing that today. So it has a little box over it. Okay, so we are going to start out with the first item that was prepared by the work teams, and it is an essential standards page. Before I give you any background knowledge on that, we are going to take a look at just this first page. This isn't the document in its entirety, and you're just going to jot down, what do you notice, what do you wonder about this document, and feel free to put any of your ideas in the chat. We'll take about 2 minutes. All right, I'm going to bring you back. Just going to kind of go over the main parts of this document, see if I can address some of those wonders. Some of them I think will be clearer as we progress. So over here on the left, you will see the dates, and it's in 3 weeks, 3-week chunks of time. There was a wonder about trimesters. I don't know anything about that, whether that's been changed. We do have 3 units and 4 grading quarters. That's how it was before, and I haven't heard any different. The essential question is listed under, and it is the question from the instructional units, which the instructional units are what guide our instruction. And then you have the standard, you have the reading behavior under the standard. The blue is the ELD, which some of you noticed in the chat with the behavior that corresponds. And then, sorry guys. And then over here to the right, you have prerequisite skills. So the prerequisite skills would be, oh, okay, so I have some students really struggling with the 3rd grade reading behavior. How did that behavior look in 2nd grade? So maybe I need to revisit that. Somebody had put in the chat that they wonder if they need to teach those prerequisite skills in small group. You know what I would say? How many of your kids need it? You may have a whole class that needs that prerequisite skill, so I could start there and then move to the grade level reading behavior. So you're going to see in a minute when you get to explore the whole document that the standards repeat themselves. It's not just like they're going to show up for 3 weeks and then be gone, right? So the reading behaviors start to drop off, but then if a new standard comes on, then there'll be reading behaviors. I'm sorry, not reading behaviors don't drop off, the prerequisites drop off. So then if a new standard is introduced, then there will be a new prerequisite to go with it. I will glance in the chat, and if there's something I haven't answered, I will respond, or Erin she might be busy responding. So you might get some answers on the next part. So let's move on here. Okay, so let me give you some background as to why and how this document was created. So if you look in the right corner of my screen, about 4 years ago, Curriculum and Instruction rolled out instructional units. The first page of that instructional units were an essential standards page, and that was a year at a glance. So we had teams of teachers, the teacher advisory committee, really looking at standards and saying, okay, so which standards encompass the most of the others? Those should be our key essential standards. But the feedback we kept getting over and over again is that it's taking a lot of time during planning because we have to decide what standards are we going to teach when? How are we going to teach certain standards together? Which standards naturally go together? So we knew that there needed to, that information needed to be chunked into smaller amounts of time. It's really hard to look at a whole year's view, right? And then last summer, if you attended Summer Institute, the document at the bottom was introduced, which is the reading behaviors. So the reading behaviors have the key essential standard, and then how does that look in terms of a reading behavior? How do I teach it in a read aloud, a shared reading, writing about reading? So it really breaks it down. So that those reading behaviors are also in the unit right after the essential standards page. But again, they're just broken by unit. So you're looking at 12 weeks at a time. So it still has to be narrowed down to say, okay, what behaviors am I going to focus on for this week? So that was the purpose. We married those two documents, made the essential standards document with the intention of really narrowing the focus and making it easier for you guys to plan.
See, just a couple of questions.
Okay.
There's a few questions that deal with the collaborative conversation piece.
Okay.
How they're wondering how that's going to go since they see that called out in the standards.
Okay. So you may notice that a lot of the reading behaviors say listen to, discuss, right? So we're going to be looking at some sample resources today. And maybe we can discuss some ideas. You will be broken up into groups. You'll be discussing ideas for how you can implement some of this, both asynchronously and synchronously. And then together we can brainstorm some ideas for discussion. I've heard some, but that might not work for everyone. And I'm sure some people have some other ideas. So we will get to that. It's not going to be ideal. Of course, having a discussion over Zoom is never going to be the same as being in the classroom, just like presenting to you guys right now. Like, it's not the same as being in a room with you, but it is where we are right now. And we just do the best we can and move forward with it. So when we get to those lessons, if ideas haven't come out, then we'll take some ideas and we'll have a little discussion about that. Anything else, Erin?
Barbara mentioned that in the special board meeting, they did say we were moving to the trimester system.
Oh, okay.
And
I
then
haven't heard
Elizabeth,
that.
me neither, but Elizabeth is asking, will students be using accelerated reader?
As far as I know, the existing programs aren't going anywhere. So I don't quote me because I don't have anything on paper, but from what I hear, there will still be STAR and Achieve. So that's as far as I know. But I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen a formal like assessment calendar or anything like that. Okay. So we are going to take some time and you're going to explore your grade level. So there is a link on the bottom of my screen. It will take you to a main folder for essential standards. Teachers, you'll just click on 4th grade. We gave access to the entire folder so that principals and coaches could have access to everyone. You are going to pick a standard and trace it through the whole year and just look at how it builds as the year progresses. After you are done exploring your grade level, you're going to click on this document here, and Erin's going to put both of these links in the chat for you, and you're just going to type in one of the boxes. What are some ways that this could be useful for planning and teaching this year? So this is an example of a way you could have all of your class respond to something so everybody can see their friends and colleagues' responses. So you're going to explore and then type in this document. And then I am going to give you a little extra time. I'm going to set a timer for 12 minutes. So if you need a stretch, bathroom break, you can take that also. All right, happy exploring. I'm going to set the timer.
What hyperlinks?
See, now that's an okay timer, Erin, that other one. The next timer we have, everyone prepare themselves because it nearly gives you a heart attack. So hopefully you guys had an opportunity to read some of the comments of your colleagues and how they would like to use this document for how it can be helpful in planning and teaching. I did see some comments about how the standards repeat themselves. And yes, because when we look at a standard, it's end of the year rigor, right? So we don't expect in the first 3 weeks that a student is going to have mastered that. The idea is that they master it by the end of the year. So the behaviors build on each other to help the students to be taught to master that standard. All right. Let's move along here. Okay, so after we created the Essential Standards document, and it was time to start planning some resource lessons, we felt like we needed a document that really backwards mapped that process out for us. We had a whole team working on lessons, so we wanted to have all that information in one document. So we created this planning and overview document. It basically was broken down by weeks. So there was week 1, week 2, week 3, and then it had the standard, the behavior, what we were going to use, what text we were going to use for read aloud, what were we going to use for shared, what strategy we were going to teach during that shared reading, making sure that that read aloud and that shared were connected. What were we going to do for grammar? How are we going to embed that in our writing? And how was the writing going to be connected to that read aloud and that shared? So this document is linked. It is also found on the EdTech website that we will show you later. If you've been to a tech session, you've probably already seen it. It is not required that you use this document. We prepared it because we needed a one glance to look and say, okay, here's the standard, here's the behavior, this is how it is going to progress throughout the 3 weeks. Feel free to make a copy and use it, modify it, whatever you want to do. But again, it's not a requirement, it's just a resource. 3rd and 4th are together because a couple of the sessions were combined, just in case you were wondering why I keep clicking through 4th grade. Okay, so now we're going to start looking at a lesson. I chose to do a shared reading lesson today as the focus. Just because I seem to get the most questions about shared reading. And I think sometimes we view it as being like a teacher with a big book and the kids on the rug. And it's not like that in upper grades, but it can be a very useful teaching strategy or teaching method. So after we had that essential standards page, and then we knew, we backwards mapped the 3 weeks and knew where we were going, we created a lesson plan. So I'm going to click on this 3rd grade lesson plan. You don't need the link because all this stuff, you will have access to all of this on the web page. So the purpose in creating this lesson plan was to give you an overview. So we didn't want you to say, oh, you know what, okay, I'm going to watch this 20-minute long video and then decide that that's not what my students need. My students don't need that particular skill. So now I just wasted time. We want you to have a quick overview to say, okay, so this lesson is a page from There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom, page 4. It is to be done after the chapter has been read aloud. So remember that a shared reading is slightly above the average level of your students. So although read alouds are more than that, if you've already exposed them in a read aloud, it's okay to pull a page and revisit as a shared reading to dig in deeper for a different purpose. You can see the standard is a reading fluency standard. It only appears in the essential standards, I believe, for the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then it drops off because it's 3rd grade. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have struggling readers in your class. I used to be an intervention specialist. I can imagine you do. This is the strategy. This is the standard and the reading behavior that teaches students to balance the use of their print and their meaning when they're reading and determining unknown words. So you can see their reading behavior is that they're going to use multiple sources of information to monitor, search, and self-correct in solving words. And it says covered words. So if you've ever seen the covered word strategy, that really trains them because a word is covered. They're forced to have to use print and meaning to figure out those words. So they're going to be learning a strategy called juggle all three balls. There's the learning intention success criteria. You can click on these slides and it will take you to the slide presentation. There's a takeaway question there, a task. So what do you want the students to do? They're going to be participating in the lesson and using meaning and visual clues to determine the words. And then how are you going to check for understanding? So you may be listening to them participate. Maybe they're going to put the word that they think it is in the chat room. Are they able to guess the right words? Or you could have them write a takeaway question, the answer to the takeaway question, and submit it through Google Classroom, kind of see where their understanding of the text is so far. So again, this plan is an overview of what this lesson is. We are not saying that for every lesson you write that you should create this lesson plan. This is just for you to say, okay, yeah, you know what? My students are struggling with reading and they're relying heavily on print. So you know what? This would be a good lesson for my students. Let me look at the video and see how I can incorporate this into my teaching. So the lesson plan will exist for every lesson that you see on the website. So after creating the lesson plan, we said, okay, so what are key features of a shared reading? So what does a good shared reading need? It needs some explicit strategy instruction. So that's when we're teaching the students how to use those strategies and modeling that for them so that they can apply it during guided and independent reading. There needs to be both print and meaning focus. So we don't want to just concentrate on phonics, right? We don't want to just focus on some kind of making meaning strategy. There needs to be think alouds, modeling, open-ended questions, and then encouraging students to use these strategies during independent reading. So they have to kind of see that connection. You aren't going to see that feature in our model lesson today. Number one, there's no students. It's just a teacher and text, which is a little awkward, I might say, recording a shared reading with no participation. It's a little weird. The link there will take you to a whole key features document. So it has what makes a good read aloud, what makes good writing lesson, and it was just the floor. What is the minimum we need to see in those lessons? And it was used when creating the lesson examples. So we are going to take a look at the third grade lesson that goes with the lesson plan you just saw. A couple of things I want to point out before we start the lesson. Number one, they are not perfect. We tried, well, we're not super tech savvy, so we used the bare minimum. You guys probably have way better ideas for how to incorporate technology, but we didn't want it to be so overwhelming that our tech was so amazing and so overwhelming for you guys that you thought, well, you know what, I can't recreate that. So our tech is simple. It's real life. You may hear dogs barking, you may hear phones ringing in our lessons, and really they're the floor. So it's just a resource, it's just an example. Thought there was one more thing I was gonna tell you and I went blank. Oh, so as you're watching the lesson today, look for the connection between the essential standard and these key features to the lesson. So how do you see those in the lesson? So this is going to be a page from There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom. So this was created in WeVideo. So the text was just put on a slide and it's like a voiceover. Today, we are going to be focusing on a strategy that we already learned called juggle all three balls. Juggling all three balls means that when I'm trying to figure out a word, I look at what would make sense there, what would look right there, and what would sound right. So today we're going to read a page from There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom. Now, we've already read this together as a read aloud, but we're going to revisit this page and dig in deeper. So feel free to read along with me. So there are some words covered, and when we come to that covered word, we're going to use meaning, structural, and visual, all three balls, what looks right, what sounds right, and makes sense, to try to figure out what word goes there. No, I have never been there, the new kid said very quickly, as he shook his, what would make sense there? Does anybody think hand? Hand makes sense. Let's see how the word looks. Well, I see it starts with a, but that's not hand. Head. Okay, so head and hand kind of look the same, right? And they both make sense, but I can see that the center of the word is very different. So let's see, does that make sense? The new kid said very quickly as he shook his head. Mrs. Abel smiles at him. Well, I guess we better find you a place to sit. She looked around the room. I don't see any place except, I suppose you can sit there at the back. No, not next to Bradley, a girl in the front row. What would make sense there? Did anybody think said? I think said, but then I'm noticing that the box seems a little longer than the word said. Said is only 4 letters, and that looks really long. What else could go there? Maybe yelled. Yelled is a little longer. Yelled makes sense. Let's see how the word looks. Exclaimed. Exclaimed makes sense and looks right. No, not next to Bradley, a girl in the front row exclaimed. Did anybody guess exclaimed in the beginning? At least it's better than in front of Bradley, said the boy next to her. Mrs. Ebel frowned. She turned to Jeff. I'm sorry, but there are no other empty. What would make sense there? Does anybody think seats? Did anybody think empty spots? Let's see if that word starts with an S. A D. Desks. Desks makes sense. I'm sorry, but there are no other empty desks. I don't mind where I sit, Jeff mumbled. Is anybody going to be really upset if I forward it to the takeaway question at the end? No? Okay. You guys all know about Bradley, right? He's naughty, doesn't have any friends in the beginning. So let's go to the end, just so you can see the takeaway question. Bradley. So I'm going to give you a question to reflect on here. After reading this page, what are your thoughts about Bradley? Okay, so you could take that page and revisit it again for another purpose, right? Maybe it's something with fluency. Maybe you want to focus in on the details about Bradley. So you can use the same text and repeat it for a different purpose. We started off, you could even incorporate another purpose with the covered words. So it could be covered words and something else. So there's like one 4th grade lesson that we had covered words and figurative language together and focusing on both of those.
Chrissy, real quick, there was a question about how to cover the words and take them off. So I'll just explain real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So we just put it in the slide, and then what we did was make a text box and fill in the text box and drag it to cover the words, and then we added an animation. So we just made it fly off the page on a click. That way, if we're in present mode, because in WeVideo, if you don't have it in present mode, the text is really small. We put it in present mode. That way, when we're in present, we can just click and the box will fly off. Hopefully that answered your question.
And we did, we recorded that in WeVideo. We found it was like way easier than trying to like have your text up and then like record it on your phone. We tried all sorts of ways to get that stuff to work. And Erin taught me WeVideo in like 1 minute. It was super easy. A lot of the videoing part of it, most of the time you're gonna hear my voice or Erin's, because most people are fine planning lessons, but they don't want to be recorded in front of their colleagues or have it be their voice or their face. And so Erin gets forced into things because she's my friend. So she didn't really have a choice. So that's why, unfortunately, we just were like, whatever, it'll be our voice, right? So anyways, all right. Are we good with the chat to move on? Yes? All right. Okay, so now we're gonna take a look at the website. So it is linked there. Or you can open a new tab and do the go.bcsd.com/DFP. I say dog, fish, pony, and it helps me remember. So if you haven't seen the EdTech web page yet, here it is. The EdTech team has worked very, very hard on it. It's amazing. If you're struggling with how to do Zoom, for example, there's a little link down here and it has some resources for using Zoom. You can also, I don't know if you guys know this, but you can get on Zoom by yourself and experiment. So, and also somebody told me earlier, you can also get on Zoom and you can have, like, say you want to record your own shared reading. You can actually share your screen with your text and you can actually record your shared reading lesson in a Zoom. So somebody gave that idea earlier also. So that's pretty easy to do. Okay, so we are gonna go to grade level lessons here, this purple circle. And we're gonna click on 3rd grade. And this is the 3rd grade homepage. So you can see that you've got the first 3 days, SEL, math, ELA, and dual immersion. You also have a sample Google Classroom here. So because we love ELA so much, we're gonna click on ELA. And then you will see the 4 weeks. Also, the planning document we told you about earlier, it's here. The whole document, not just a page. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on week 1. And then you will see that there's the lesson plan. And then over here, you will see some have slides and videos. So if it has slides and videos, what it means is, so when you put it in WeVideo, you create slides first. And then basically you're recording as you're presenting the slides. So if it was recorded that way, then you'll see the slide presentation by itself. And that makes it easy if you just want to steal that slide presentation and you want to do that with your class synchronously, then you can. Otherwise, there's videos also that go with them, or some of them are just videos. You'll notice that you see for week 1, you'll see 3 read alouds, a shared reading, a grammar, and a writing. The reason why there are 3 read alouds is not because we think read aloud is the most important, but if we're doing a novel, we'll never get through a novel in a unit if we do just 1 read aloud a week, right? Some of them are short, some of them are combined chapters. It just kind of depends. We try not to make it too long because we know students have a hard time sitting in class watching a lesson for more minutes than they are old. So in front of a screen is probably going to be even harder. So we try to watch the time on those. So we are going to give you some time to explore now. So just go ahead and go into the webpage and start exploring some lessons. The lesson I showed you earlier is the shared reading from week 2. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to explore, and then we'll come back. Leave the website up because we're going to use it for the next activity. All right, I'm going to send you off exploring. Tried to grab it quick that time, Erin. It about gives you a heart attack. All right. So if you still have your web page up, great. We're going to use it for the next activity. Before we do that, we just want to take a quick look at some of the new education lingo. So you've probably been hearing the term synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. So just take about a minute and review those bullet points. All right. Okay, so for this activity, you will be placed into 4 different breakout rooms. One group will be read aloud, shared, writing, and grammar. So when it notifies you to enter the breakout room, you will see what you are. If you forget, when you get into the room, it should be in the corner of your screen which group you're in. When you get into the breakout room, one participant needs to share their screen, and you're going to go to the lessons for pick whichever week you want. So since we already looked at shared reading for week 2, if you're shared reading, pick week 3 or week 4. And you're all going to look at the lesson together, and then you're going to discuss the possibilities for using this lesson synchronously, asynchronously, or in a traditional model, right? So how could I use this when we are back into a traditional model of learning? And then when you come back from the breakout room, you're going to have one person who's going to be the spokesperson for your group to tell the rest of us what you discussed. We're going to ask that person to share their screen. Some of the groups, when they leave and go into the breakout room, they have one person share their screen, and that same person shares with the big group when they come back, and then another person discusses. That seems to work well, but whatever works for your group. Just remember, when you go into your breakout room, you need to be looking at a lesson plan for your area and talking about how you can use it synchronously, asynchronously, and traditionally. Okay, so I am going to assign breakout rooms, so give me just 1 second. Takes me a minute, I have to rename them really quick. You will have 10 minutes in your breakout room. All right, and I'm sending you off. All right. I think we all made it back. I have already made sure that you guys have permission to share your screen, so I'm going to stop sharing mine. All right, so let's start with the read aloud group. Who's going to share their screen from that group?
I will speak. If somebody else.
Letitia was going to share her screen. Oh, I'm sorry. Ours is shared reading. Never mind.
Okay.
I was kind of drafted to share my screen at the last minute, but I actually have mine open on another computer. So
You can, if you want to you can just tell us like what lesson you looked at, that's fine. And then just tell us what you talked about.
Okay, so we looked at read aloud. We just looked at the read aloud. I guess it's the first thing that you look at. I've been going back and forth. So there's like slides and videos and okay, so the headings, we've got lesson plans, slides, and videos.
And then what did you guys discuss in terms of using the lessons?
Okay, well, one of the things that we talked about was doing like a whole class lesson. Obviously, like the teacher would be reading aloud. And we talked about possibly using Zoom to record our read aloud just in case there was a kid who was absent or sick or whatever, being able to do that. And then if we wanted to do some kind of accountability piece, we could have a question on Google Classroom, or we could do a Jamboard where they do an electronic sticky note, maybe writing down a question or writing down something that they heard in the chapter. And we talked about asynchronous, when we could assign maybe that same read aloud or the read aloud from somebody else who again doing that accountability piece where they had to type in a question on electronic sticky note.
Did she freeze? Does anybody else in her group want to finish up, or are we good, or? All right, maybe we can come back. Thank you, Tanya, for sharing. Let's move to share reading.
I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'll begin talking, and then I'll let my group chime in.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we went into week 3 and we opened up this little lesson called shared reading. And it has a Google Slides. Let me open that up. And it has, we didn't play it, so I'm pretty sure it plays or it reads the entire book. It's just it is a read aloud. So I was thinking about how it would become shared reading. So as we were looking at the reading behaviors, one of the behaviors, it talked about voice and dialogue. So for synchronously, we were thinking for the teacher to model to the students how you would change your voice during dialogue, and then maybe have the students all together practice as well. And then asynchronously, we can have them do little breakout sessions. We're not quite sure about the technology wise if we would be able to show the book or have like some type of print for them to read off, but somehow have them branch off and practice with the dialogue, and they're changing their voice together.
Okay. The reason why it was a shared reading lesson is just because all of the kids can see the text and because of the level of the book.
Okay, that's what I figured since it was
yeah.
presented through the Google Slides.
So the slides are like, it's like the one I showed you, except for that one, we took like images of every page and then like uploaded them into WeVideo.
Oh, awesome.
Right, Erin? That's what we did on that one? I think so.
Yes.
There was a lot of lessons, sorry.
Is it just read? We didn't, like I said, we didn't push on it because of time restraints, but so is the book just read through?
It stops and focuses on the strategies there.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're working on that strategy called wait, what? So like basically something doesn't make sense. I stop and I ask myself what is happening, right? It's a monitoring strategy. And then there's also some modeling of that change of voice in the dialogue.
Okay, so that's what I seen
Yeah.
both of those, but like I said, just the little one part of it that we were going to, we were kind of referring to was the voice change. And
Yes.
then instead of, us teachers having to talk the whole time, give them a chance to do it with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess, Chrissy, the issue is how do they have that open in the Zoom? So, like, would you have them in a small group later in asynchronous learning?
How would
Zoom,
they have?
so that they could
Yeah.
practice? Because having 30 reading all at the same time on screen probably wouldn't be the best way to hear that. So, what are your...
Does anybody know? So is there a way to share that in the breakout rooms? Does anybody know?
Maybe you can make a PDF file or something and share that link in the chat for them to click.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the WeVideo is a link, right, Erin? Yes.
Yeah.
So that could be shared too. And then the pictures are out there. I know that's time consuming. So it's just being choosy with what text you use, with the ones that you have access to online, I guess would probably be easier. Cindy, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, at the beginning of the year, these are incoming, they just left second grades. So their tech skills, as far as being able to split their screen and all of that stuff is going to be, they're not going to be there yet.
Right. And the idea is like, if I'm doing a shared reading and everybody's not reading along with me, that's okay. They don't have to be reading along. The point is they can see the text, they can hear me modeling and thinking aloud that process and that strategy. So during shared reading, I don't ever say like, you need to be following along, you need to be pointing to the words. Basically, that's their choice of whether to read along. So you're right, we're really not going to be able to have our finger on everyone as far as engagement goes. Even breakout rooms, even small group, those type of things, they're gonna have to be taught some protocols for going into that setting, right? And I know there's a way for us to be able to pop into those rooms also. But honestly, the accountability thing, I mean, we're just gonna have to bank on some strong routines because we can't make everyone participate in that shared reading. But we can provide them a strong model of strategies and encourage them to use those strategies when they're reading on their own.
A flip grade would be really nice, but again, it would be the technology or them having access at home to a book that they could grab and read some dialogue from to show that they know how to do that. But that would actually have accountability that they turn in the little flip grid.
And on some of the lessons, we do have that in the check for understanding. It'll say to have the students submit a flip grid with to answer like whatever the takeaway question was. Another thing is too, there is time built into the proposed daily schedule to teach technology. because you're going to have to, I mean, these are second graders coming to third grade. They're not going to be very familiar with even Google Classroom. So there's going to have to be some time to teach that, and it is built into the daily schedule. So at the beginning, you might not be able to do that kind of stuff until they learn that process.
Chris, we have several questions in the chat that I think probably would benefit everybody.
Okay.
Marianne asked if the reading strategies that were used are from the Reading Strategies book.
Okay, so the Juggle All Three Balls is from the Reading Strategies book. Again, we didn't want to bank on everyone having that book, so that's why we taught the strategy in the lesson, so that, you know, if teachers have never seen it, then it's explicitly taught there. The Wait What strategy is a monitoring strategy. So basically, when you monitor your reading, right, you notice when something doesn't make sense. When something's sad, you know it's sad and you get upset. When something's funny, you laugh. That's how, as adults, we monitor our reading. Students really lack that skill to be able to monitor their reading. Like, I remember in third grade, we read Charlotte's Web out loud when I was a teacher, and it's like Charlotte died and I'm crying and no one else is crying. And I'm like, they're like, why are you crying? And I'm like, Charlotte died. They're like, what? So they weren't paying attention and monitoring what they were reading. So they had no idea that Charlotte had died. So we introduced that monitoring. Fountas and Pinnell say that monitoring is the #1 most important reading strategy that students are taught to monitor. So we basically, last summer, rolled out that monitoring was one of our breakouts during Summer Institute, and we made up that strategy, Wait What. So it's basically like the student comes to something, they're not understanding what's going on, they stop and they say, wait, what? So it's kind of getting the kids, when you don't know something, when something doesn't make sense, you need to stop and you need to figure out what's going on. So that's where that one came from, Marianne.
And then are you going to be making lesson plans like this for the whole time, or are we in during distance learning, or are we going to have to do our own after these first few weeks?
Okay, so I don't actually know the answer to that. I know they won't be for the whole year because I don't think that's possible for the lessons to be created for the whole year. The problem being is that the people who created these, I mean, aside from us who work in curriculum, but we had teams, they're at a school site. So they're getting ready to go back to work. So I don't know, I mean, we had probably 3 to 6 people per grade level working on this content. So I don't have word on where from here. I can tell you it's most likely not going to be the rest of the year, but it could possibly be maybe a few more weeks. Really, it was the structure and the process we were introducing with the idea that people could take this model and, you know, make it their own. So I don't actually know the answer to that. You can plug that into the digital parking lot if you would like. I know it's been, the question's been flying around in the office because others have asked. So you can put it in there, but it's already in our office, so I think it'll be discussed moving forward. So like I said, they're constantly updating that website, so just make sure you keep checking it. And that was a really bad answer to that question. Sorry, I was doing the best I can to answer it. Anything else, Erin?
No, I think other people kind of answered the questions that were in there about like Flipgrid. And as far as Zoom questions, there are a lot of, check out that BCSD site. There's tons of tutorials that will guide you through some of those things like breakout rooms and things like that. And if there's not something there that you want, there's a place you can click to request a video on a particular thing, and then the ed tech team will help you out with that.
And another thing is too, most of the stuff on Zoom is super easy. So like I got on a Zoom by myself and I just started playing around with it, and that's how I figured out breakout rooms. So if you can open up a Zoom meeting with just you and you can just mess around, or like one time I invited Aaron, so it was just Aaron and I at the Zoom, and then we were just playing around with how to work stuff. I mean, I don't know how to pop into a breakout room and all of that, but like the basics, you can probably teach yourself. It's super easy. Okay, are we ready for writing? Everyone's like, wait, what were we working on? Oh, Monique, thank you.
I guess I need to do that.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. We did writing for week 4, and it's a modeled writing, and there was a video and slides that the kids have. So it's show rather than tell how characters feel. That's what their ultimate goal is, to show it in their writing. And because it's modeled writing, we said we could do it one of 2 ways. We could introduce it synchronously. Everybody watches it together and then talk about it. And then we can do it asynchronously, where they break out and they could rewatch it, and they can also, there's a bubble map that they would fill in that they could do independently or as a group. So we could use it both ways. The video where they could have it as a backup. Oh, wait, okay, we just watched it together. Now we can watch it again if I need it. And then to complete the bubble map independently while we are doing something else with another group.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Michelle. All right. And what about grammar? So just a little FYI on grammar. We didn't record lessons. We do have some like videos explaining the grammar skill from like from YouTube, but they're mostly slide presentations. Is someone going to share their screen for grammar, or? Thank you, BB.
Oh, the mute button changed where the location.
Are you 3rd grade now?
Yeah, I got changed. I moved.
You threw me off for a minute. I thought I was in the wrong session.
I'm excited. We are doing week 1 of, and it's something that 2nd graders do work on, because I remember doing this last year. Oops, let me move my screen over. Make it bigger. How do I do that? Oh, I had a split screen.
That's okay.
And the verb tenses, so past, present, and future verb tenses. So we talked about the synchronous learning might be where you do a shared reading and they are looking at the text, and then they are maybe writing in the chat words or past tense, present, verb tenses that they're seeing. We could be doing that together. They could also write it on a piece of paper and then do it together. And then asynchronous would be maybe like we clicked on this, the Google Slides, and maybe we could make a copy of this and put it into the Google Classroom as an assignment that they could turn in, or give them a list of words or have them come up with words. Also maybe in a flip grid. Give them some words, and then they say the words in the different tenses, and then turn it in that way. And traditional, I think any way that you use technology, we can bring it back traditionally. Or they can work with their group to come up with more words that are used. So does anybody else from my group want to chime in?
Yeah, we were just thinking like there's a video there, so you could show the video kind of like direct instruction whole group and go over like the first, I believe BB, can you go back, because I couldn't figure out how to share my screen. Can you go back to that slide? If you go to the very first slide, you can see that there's a video up at the top. And then slide 2 is like a we do, like the teacher kind of showing them this is what happens. You're looking for the ED, there it is, picked. So that's why I put victims thing. And then they kind of get a chance to do it on their own. So like BB was saying, you could kind of just split this in half. You could do the first part with them, and then they could go back, maybe even do another one, whole group, and then have them do it, that very last one, just on their own, just as a quick, did they get it?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Michael.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, BB. Welcome to third grade.
Yay.
Yeah, we're totally excited to have her.
Yes.
She's on my team.
Third grade's an awesome grade.
I'm excited.
There is one thing in the chat about recording Zoom meetings, and I do not know the answer to that. So that might be a parking lot question. I'm not sure if that is against the rules. I'm not sure if it needs parent consent. So maybe put that in the chat room. And then Carday, did you have a question? There you are.
I'm looking at, yeah, thanks. This has to do with the Google Drive. So when I'm moving your lesson to my drive, I copy it. But how do I open it so that the kids can, when I put it in a Google Classroom, it's a link that they can actually type in? Because yours says view only.
When you make a copy, it's going to be something that you can edit. And then when you go to Google Classroom and you create an assignment, you'll have it'll say something like view only, everybody can edit, or make a copy for each student. So it depends on what you want them to do. If you only want the kid to if you want, like for what we were talking about, where each kid's going to want to answer their own, we would want to make a copy for each student. If it's something that you want them to work on collaboratively, you would just put students can edit, and anybody who's in that particular group can edit the document.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael. I could not have explained it that well. Thank you. All right.
Hopefully that didn't make sense to her.
I think it did. I think it made sense. Yeah, Carday? Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing. So we just have a few more things and I'm going to get you guys out of here. Okay, so what about independent reading? So if you remember in April or May, if you were around then, we did some virtual independent reading presentations, some PDs, and all that information is on this slide. So the white link is to the actual presentation. There are example conferences that you can watch. There are articles to read about independent reading and conferencing. There is a cafe menu, goals, sample questions you can ask. We've had questions about like a virtual cafe menu. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm sure somebody will come up with it. So you can review these materials, and I'm sure you've seen it before, just to kind of refresh. And then the very last slide here, if you went to the town hall meeting, you probably saw the proposed schedule. This has not been solidified. So it's just a proposed schedule. Third grade is there on the left. It has the times, and then if it's synchronous, asynchronous, and what the proposed subject is. And you can see, we talked about earlier, the technology. Do you guys see that 30 minutes right there at 8:55? So I did link this. This was just a snippet of what was presented in the town hall, but I linked it it'll prompt you to make a copy, and it's a table. And so I extended that right side so you guys can put notes on it. So as you're reflecting today on the PD, you're probably having ideas of where you can put your read aloud or where you can incorporate independent reading. So just so you can go in and maybe type some notes so you don't forget. That schedule may change, but at least you'll have a document that you can kind of write down some notes upon reflecting on today's learning.
Chrissy, we were talking about that, and do they really think the kids are going to be able to sit in front of the computer for that long?
Well, you know they can, Michael.
Yes, but that's only to play Fortnite.
I know. I don't know.
That's my biggest concern right now, is just how long are we going to be able to keep them?
I know. I get it. I completely get it. I mean, my daughter did summer school, and she's in high school, and she took world history, and it was on Canvas. And I literally would walk in there and she had her computer open and her teacher talking and she's like working out. I'm like, wow, this is productive. Learning
Exactly.
a lot, are we?
Exactly.
So I completely get it. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do. We really got to work together to figure out like what are we gonna do to make it where it's like a little bit of screen and a little bit of this and a little bit of screen, right? So whatever we can do to think about how, I just don't know what choice we have. I mean, a lot of this comes from the state, so we're kind of in a corner. So I guess that didn't really answer your question.
No, I mean, I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
they're basically asking us to do something that's pretty much impossible, but we still have to do it. Just, that's the way it is.
Right. I know. Yeah, I completely understand.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. I'm
I know.
excited just to be teaching again. I mean,
Yes.
this has been a long break. You know what I mean? Longer than I normally like. But at the same time, I want to make sure I have students.
Exactly. Right. I mean, you want to do what's best for your students. You want your students to learn. We all do. No, we get it. We get it. I think we're all ready to get away from our homes, right? All right. So let's move on here. Okay, so I'm going to sorry, guys, I have to remove this text box off of here. Erin, if you have that open, will you remove that text box? I'm having a little difficulty here for some reason. And I'm going to stop recording so you guys will hear that too.